Hey, Jeanette, thank you for being with us today. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell us what is your area of expertise, your title if you have one. If you can spell out your name, tell us how to pronounce it correctly, and what would you like us to call you?
Great. Well, it's great to be here with you today. I'm Jeanette Senecal, the Senior Director of Mission Impact at the League of Women Voters of the United States. And I work on civic engagement and election administration issues for more than 20 years. So I have worked with people all over the country to help improve our elections and engage more voters in the election process. You can call me Jeanette, and my pronouns are she, her.
Jeanette, thank you for being with us today. We are approaching a major general election later this year, so we're getting all these questions from all of our audience because, as I told you before, our content runs nationally, so we get viewer questions from across the board, basically. And I understand that this question comes from the concept of this question changes by state, by county, but we want to understand why is this and how does this affect the voting process. So our main question for you is, if a poll worker writes on a ballot, does it invalidate it?
You don't want anybody except yourself writing on your ballot. So if a poll worker has mistakenly written on your ballot, you would want to turn that ballot back into them and request a new ballot. That ballot has now been spoiled. You are the only person who should be marking anything on that ballot. You don't want to be putting your name on it because that could also invalidate your ballot because your ballot is supposed to be secret. You want to be using the utensils and the writing utensils that are provided to you to mark the ballot. You don't want to make stray marks on your ballot. You want your ballot to be crystal clean when your poll worker gives it to you.
And generally speaking, before we dive into the specific scenarios, are there any exceptions or instances in which a poll worker will touch that ballot in any way?
When you're checking in at the polling place, if it's a primary, the poll worker might mark on a piece of paper. It should be a different piece of paper, whether or not you're getting the Democratic ballot or the Republican ballot. Or in the general election or any primary election, if you vote in a polling place where more than one ballot is available, because some people voting at that polling place are voting for County District 1 and other people are voting for County District 2, or some people are in City Council District 3 and other people are in City Council District 4. That means there are different ballot types available at that polling place. And so the poll worker will write on a piece of paper which ballot type you're supposed to get. Again, that should not be on your ballot itself. It would be a separate piece of paper that you then go give to the ballot clerk, essentially, who then gives you the ballot. And again, the ballot itself should not be written on by anybody other than you.
It seems like some states, like North Carolina, for instance, they have laws in place that require election workers to write like identifying numbers on the ballots, for instance, or any like some kinds of markings of that nature. And I think that's what a lot of our viewers in particular are concerned about, that if in these states, if an election worker is writing an identifying number on their ballot or something to that effect, that's going to invalidate it and they're not going to be able to have their vote counted. Can you speak to that at all in those states that have those requirements? If people should be worried?
In a state that has a requirement that the identification number, usually it's counting. So we have distributed ballot 10. So that there's an accounting of the ballots that have been distributed, so that at the end of the day, when they're trying to audit their ballot process, they know how many ballots have been distributed, they know how many ballots are still blank, they know how many ballots were spoiled and somebody asked for another one. Sometimes they're writing kind of the ballot number at the top. If that is happening, again, that should only be at the top of your ballot or in the indicated space if it happens to be at the bottom of your ballot or some other place, but it would not be anywhere in the field where the offices and the candidates are marked. If there is any kind of stray marking where the offices and candidates are listed, you would definitely want to ask for a new ballot. But otherwise, if it is a state that requires a ballot to be handled in that way, then a voter should not worry about it. And I will also just add that in many states, when you are voting in person and you are completing the process, you often will feed your ballot yourself into the ballot counting machine. And if there is something that would reject your ballot, it often spits it back out to you to tell you, oh, your ballot has a problem with it, you should go review it again. And if it needs to be spoiled, officially turned back in, and you can receive a new one, then at that point in time, the process can help you there too.
And Jeanette, I don't know if you're able to answer this, but do you happen to know which states require election workers to write on ballots, like an identifying number? I know North Carolina is one, but do you happen to know which other states have laws in place requiring this?
Fortunately, I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, Jeanette, so what will be the case in with a mail-in ballot? Like, because I think one of our viewers, I think that was his question, that if you get your ballot on the mail and if that ballot has a mark, have you heard anything regarding this? And it will be the same case. Like, what can a voter do if you receive a mail-in ballot with a mark on it?
So if you receive your mail-in ballot, it has a mark or a tear or it got a watermark on it or anything like that, you would want to request a new ballot. In some states, you can go to the polling place to request a new ballot. In some states, you can walk into your Board of Elections office and request your new ballot. You would have to turn in the unvoted ballot so that there's not multiple ballots in play. But you can get a new ballot. If there's any kind of stray marking, whether it's in person or by mail, you would definitely want to get a new ballot. It's called a spoiled ballot. Also, in the mail-in ballot process, many states have something called a cure process. So if there is something wrong with your mail-in ballot, they will follow up with you and give you the opportunity to fix or cure whatever the problem is with your ballot. So if there was a stray marking, you would have the opportunity to fix your ballot at that point in time as well. And the league is actually working all across the country to make sure there are fair curing processes for voters in all 50 states, not just the states that currently have that process in place.
Jeanette, coming from, because it feels like the 2020 election wasn't that long ago. Coming from the challenges of that electoral process and this one, what do you think are the main differences when it comes to voting? Of course, from your organization and what you guys have been seeing, what can the voters expect from this process in comparison to the 2020 cycle, if that makes sense?
It does. It's actually a really great question because this is the third presidential election in a row where voters have different rules. They had the pre-COVID rules, they had the 2020 COVID rules, and now they have the era post-COVID, if we're ever in a post-COVID era, but the post-2020 rules. And many voters only vote in the presidential cycle. So there can be confusion about what the process is. The league actually runs a website called vote411.org so that voters can go and find what their rules are at any point in time. So the rules that they face right now are available to them at vote411.org, and it's available in English and Spanish so that people can have access to the information in whatever language they need. And the primary difference does relate mostly to the mail-in ballot rules. Many states relaxed those rules in the presidential 2020 election, and then some of them reverted back to their 2016 rules. Some of them stayed with their 2020 election rules, and some of them have changed them yet again. So it's a third way for 2024. So we do really encourage people to go to resources like vote411.org to find the current rules. Their polling place might have changed. What identification they have to show, if they have to show any identification, might have changed. So it's really good to check out resources like that so you know what rules you're facing today. When the rules change, there's also a lot of room for confusion. There's already room for confusion because your parent in California will have different rules than your sibling in New York if you live in Arizona, right? So there's already people face different rules across the country. And so making sure you know what your rules are where you currently are, because we've also seen a lot of people move during the pandemic as well. So you want to make sure you know what your rules are in the place where you're currently living and you're currently registered. And if you need to update your registration, a place like vote411.org can help you with that as well.
So there's definitely enough time to make this change because you're absolutely right. There was a lot of people who moved during or after the pandemic, and they don't necessarily vote at the same place that they voted back in 2020. That was a great clarification. So is there any specific recommendations that you can make for first-time voters? Because I know that the process could be confusing for them as well.
We encourage everyone to think through and make their voting plan. Since every state does have different rules, find out what your early voting rules are, find out what your absentee rules are, finding out what your election day voting options are so that you can pick the option that works for your life. When can you vote? Fit it in when it works for you. Then also clearly make sure you're registered, and if you need to update your registration, update your registration. Learn about the candidates who are going to be on your ballot so you can pick the person who's best going to represent you. And again, I would direct people to the League's resource, vote411.org, where we ask candidates at all levels of government where they stand on different issues so people can decide who would best represent them. And then make sure if you're voting on election day or really any day, what is your plan for turning in your ballot? If you're going to a drop box or you're putting it in the mail, are you putting it in the mail by the deadline? If you're going to vote early, excuse me, if you're going to vote early in person, that gives you an opportunity, if there is a problem, to resolve it before election day. If you're voting on election day itself, what time are you going to go? How are you going to get there? If you've really thought through what your process and your plan is going to be, voters are much more likely to execute it on election day or before election day if that's how they've chosen to engage.
The only thing that I know I touched on this earlier, but I know in those states where election workers have to write on the ballot in some way or mark it or just write a number, people are concerned that that will completely invalidate their ballot. I know that you said people shouldn't worry, but can you speak election workers in these states are marking your ballot in any way that it's going to completely invalidate it? Can you speak to whether that's true or false?
Well, if your name has been written on your ballot, that would invalidate your ballot. You don't want the poll worker writing your name on the ballot. If a poll worker is supposed to be writing anything on your ballot, there would be a specific place indicated, usually a box of some sort, that anything they're doing to your ballot should appear within that box. If they are straying outside of that box, you would want to ask for a new ballot.
That's really helpful. So basically there's this spot that's indicated for them to make that marking, but if it's outside of that, then that could pose problems. So just making sure they're doing what they should be doing in that regard.
And again, in most states, poll workers are not writing anything on your ballot. So that is generally the rule of thumb that a voter would want to follow. If a voter happens to be in a state where this is how the ballot is handled, there should be a delineated space where all of that activity should happen.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Jeanette. I appreciate it. I think that's all I had, Mauricio.
Jeanette, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you think is fundamental or important for our audiences to know or to understand?
Well, honestly, one of the things I would say is your community might need you to be a poll worker. So volunteer to be a poll worker, and then you'll know what the rules are, and you'll go through the training process, and you'll see how that process works, and you'll see what the rules are and what the training looks like. And then you can help share that information and spread that information in your community as well. You are a trusted messenger to your friends and family. You can empower your friends and family to get out and vote. So you encouraging others to participate could make the difference in many voters' lives. So I encourage you to do that.